The hospital was supposed to be a place of healing, a place where people found help, not where they were handcuffed in front of everyone. But that's exactly what happened to Dr. Maya Caldwell. She was in the middle of saving a child's life when police stormed in and arrested her on the spot. Without asking questions, without verifying who she was, they slammed handcuffs on her wrists and forced her away, right in front of her horrified colleagues. The officers thought they had caught their suspect. They believed they had made the right call. But moments later, panic set in. As whispers spread through the hospital halls, someone urgently called the police chief, and the officers suddenly realized they had made a terrible mistake. Who was this woman? Why were the police now terrified of the person they had just arrested? Before we dive into this shocking and eye-opening story, tell us, have you ever witnessed an injustice like this? Comment below, and don't forget to subscribe for more gripping stories that will leave you thinking. Now, let's get into it. The beeping of monitors, hurried footsteps, and the faint scent of antiseptic filled the air as Dr. Maya Caldwell rushed through the emergency room. Just moments before her arrest, she had been doing what she did best, saving lives. A dedicated surgeon, she had built a reputation as one of the best in the field, known for her precision, her compassion, and her ability to stay calm under pressure. But none of that mattered the moment the police saw her. To them, she wasn't a doctor. She was just a black woman who fit the description. Dr. Maya Caldwell was 35 years old, with deep brown skin, intelligent eyes, and an air of confidence that came from years of experience. She had worked harder than anyone to get where she was. The daughter of a single mother, she had fought through discrimination, financial struggles, and endless nights of studying to become a renowned surgeon. But no matter how many people she saved, there were still moments, like this one, where she was reminded that some people only saw her skin color before anything else. The hospital was a place of constant motion and urgency. The bright overhead lights reflected off the white-tiled floors as nurses hurried between rooms. Doctors discussed patient cases in hushed voices, and anxious families waited for news. It was a world where seconds mattered, a place where Maya had spent years proving herself, day in and day out. Yet, despite her position, she still faced moments of prejudice. Patients who assumed she was a nurse, colleagues who questioned her authority, security guards who asked to see her ID, even though they never questioned her white coworkers. But she had learned to push through it, focusing on her mission to save lives. It was a busy evening when everything changed. The doors to the emergency room burst open, and a panicked woman, Teresa Lopez, ran inside with her unconscious son in her arms. Her face was streaked with tears, and her voice trembled with desperation as she screamed for help. Maya had responded immediately, rushing forward to take the child from her arms. She didn't ask questions, she just acted. Every second counted, steeded high to need. Maya carefully laid the child on a hospital bed. She quickly assessed the situation. The boy's breathing was shallow, and his pulse was weak. He had a bruise forming on his temple, a sign of a possible head injury. She ordered a nurse to bring an oxygen mask and called for an urgent CT scan. There was no time to waste. Just as she was about to turn to Teresa for more information, chaos erupted. The hospital doors flew open again, this time with police officers, storming in. Their hands were on their holsters and their faces were filled with determination, as if they had already decided who was guilty. Officer Brad Mitchell, the lead officer, was the first to step forward. A man in his mid-40s, he carried himself with the authority of someone who had been in law enforcement for years. His eyes were sharp, his posture stiff. He had been in countless situations like this, and in his mind, this was just another case of bringing in a suspect. His eyes scanned the room before landing on Maya. His expression hardened. Without hesitation, he pointed at her. "That's her. Cuff her." Maya barely had time to react before two officers grabbed her arms and yanked them behind her back. Metal cuffs snapped around her wrists, tight and unforgiving. Gasps filled the emergency room as nurses and doctors looked on in horror. The child she was treating was still unconscious on the bed. A nurse rushed forward. "What are you doing?" "She's Dr. Caldwell." But the officers didn't listen. Maya's breath caught in her throat. "I don't know what you think is happening here, but you're making a mistake," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. Officer Mitchell gave her a cold look. "Tell it to the judge." And just like that, Dr. Maya Caldwell, one of the most respected surgeons in the country, was dragged out of the hospital in handcuffs. Dr. Maya Caldwell's heart pounded as she was dragged through the hospital halls, her wrists burning from the tight handcuffs. The murmur of shocked voices echoed around her, but the officers didn't stop to listen. They had already made up their minds. To them, she wasn't a doctor, a surgeon, or a woman who had just been trying to save a child. She was a suspect. Behind her, nurses and doctors shouted in protest. A security guard, finally realizing what was happening, stepped forward. "Wait, that's Dr. Caldwell. You've got the wrong person." But Officer Brad Mitchell barely spared him a glance. His grip on Maya's arm tightened as he pulled her toward the hospital exit. "She fits the description," he said coldly. Maya struggled to process what was happening. She had seen this before. Black professionals mistaken for criminals, judged before they could explain themselves. But she had never imagined it would happen to her. She had spent her whole life working to prove herself, to build her reputation, to make a difference. And now, none of that seemed to matter. Just minutes ago, she had been treating an unconscious child, responding to a mother's desperate cries for help. But instead of being able to do her job, she was being arrested. For what? She tried to stay calm, to reason with them. "Listen to me," she said firmly. "I am Dr. Maya Caldwell. I am a surgeon at this hospital. I was treating that boy." Officer Mitchell's jaw tightened. "You can explain it downtown." Maya's frustration grew. "You are making a mistake. Look at my ID. Talk to the hospital staff. This is absurd." One of the nurses ran forward, waving Maya's hospital badge in the air. "This is her ID. She's been working here for years. Let her go." Another officer, younger and looking slightly uneasy, hesitated. "Sir, maybe we should check." But Officer Mitchell cut him off. "We have a report of an assault. The suspect is a black woman in her 30s, seen leaving the scene near the hospital." He turned to Maya. "You were the first person we saw who matched the description." Maya's stomach turned. That was all it took? A vague description, a lazy assumption, and suddenly she was guilty. She could see the doubt flicker in some of the officers' eyes, but none of them spoke up. The weight of their silence made her chest tighten. By now, patients and visitors had gathered, watching in disbelief. Some pulled out their phones, recording everything. The situation was spiraling, and the officers were too stubborn to admit their mistake. Teresa Lopez, the panicked mother from earlier, suddenly appeared in the crowd. She had been so focused on her child that she hadn't noticed what was happening before. But when she saw Maya in cuffs, her face turned pale. "Wait! No, no, no! "You don't understand," she cried, pushing through the crowd. "She was helping my son. She's not the person you're looking for." Officer Mitchell hesitated. For the first time, his confidence wavered. He glanced at his partner as if trying to decide whether to listen. But before anyone could say another word, his radio crackled. "Dispatch to Officer Mitchell. Stand by. We may have a problem." Maya saw it in his face before he even spoke. Panic. The officers exchanged uneasy glances. Something wasn't right. Maya lifted her chin, her voice cold. "I told you, you're making a mistake." Officer Mitchell's grip loosened slightly, but he didn't remove the cuffs. Not yet. He looked at his radio again, waiting for the next words. Then his radio crackled again, and this time the voice on the other end was urgent. "Officer Mitchell, you need to release her. Now." The hospital went silent. Every eye was on the officers. Maya could feel it, the shift in the air. Something had changed. The officers, so sure of themselves just moments ago, now looked uncertain. And when they finally learned who she really was, the panic truly began. Officer Brad Mitchell's grip on Maya's arm loosened slightly, but he still didn't remove the handcuffs. The voice on the radio had been firm, urgent. Something had changed. The officers around him, who had been so sure of their actions just moments ago, now looked uncertain, nervous even. The growing tension in the air was thick, and everyone in the hospital lobby could feel it. Maya's heart pounded, but she remained calm, lifting her chin defiantly. "I told you, you're making a mistake," she repeated, her voice cold and controlled. She wasn't going to beg. She wasn't going to plead. They were the ones who had something to explain now. The radio crackled again. "Mitchell, do you copy? Release her immediately. You have the wrong person, and you're about to make this a whole lot worse." The young officer standing beside. Mitchell took a cautious step back, his hand moving away from his holster. His face was pale now, his eyes darting nervously between Maya and his superior. "Sir, we need to listen to dispatch." Mitchell's jaw clenched. He still held on to the cuffs as if letting go would mean admitting he had been wrong. But Maya saw it in his face, the realization that he had just arrested someone he never should have touched. A moment later, the hospital doors swung open again, and this time, a man in a sharply pressed suit strode inside, flanked by 2 uniformed officers. The room went dead silent. Every officer stiffened, recognizing him instantly. It was Police Chief Douglas Carter. Carter's eyes scanned the scene, his expression unreadable. But when he saw Dr. Maya Caldwell standing there in cuffs, surrounded by officers, his face darkened with fury. He turned to Mitchell, his voice like thunder. "Take those cuffs off, right now." Mitchell hesitated. "Sir, I was just—" "Now!" Carter's voice boomed through the hospital, leaving no room for argument. Mitchell fumbled with the key, his fingers slightly shaking as he unlocked the cuffs and stepped back. Maya rubbed her wrists, feeling the burn where the metal had bitten, into her skin. A ripple of relief and anger swept through the crowd. The moment her hands were free, Chief Carter turned to her. "Dr. Caldwell, I am so sorry for this. This should have never happened." His voice held genuine regret. But Maya wasn't interested in apologies. Not yet. She crossed her arms, her eyes piercing into Mitchell's. "You didn't even ask questions. You saw a black woman in scrubs and assumed she was a criminal." Her voice was steady, but the weight of her words made Mitchell flinch. The hospital staff watched, some nodding in agreement. The nurse who had fought for her earlier stepped closer. "This isn't the first time something like this has happened," she said firmly. "Security always asks Dr. Caldwell for her ID, but they never ask the white doctors. And now this." A few officers shifted uncomfortably, their faces burning with shame. The tension in the air was suffocating. Carter's gaze never left Mitchell. "Officer Mitchell, do you even realize what you just did?" Mitchell swallowed, hard. She fit the description," he muttered, but there was no confidence in his voice anymore. Carter stepped forward, his presence commanding the room. "Fit the description? Do you even know who Dr. Maya Caldwell is?" Mitchell didn't answer, so Carter continued. "She is one of the most respected surgeons in this state. She has operated on government officials, law enforcement officers, hell, even one of our own precinct chiefs after a car accident last year. And you just arrested her in the middle of her job because of what? A vague description." Mitchell's face turned red, his eyes darting around as if searching for a way out of the situation. Maya took a slow step forward, her voice cutting through the silence. "If I weren't Dr. Maya Caldwell, if I were just another black woman walking through this hospital, would I still be in cuffs right now?" No one answered, but the silence itself was the answer. The young officer beside Mitchell cleared, his throat looking deeply uncomfortable. "Sir, there was another call that came in right before dispatch told us to release her. The real suspect? They caught her across town. It wasn't her." The weight of the mistake hit Mitchell like a truck. He had arrested an innocent woman. No, not just any woman. A doctor, a respected surgeon, someone who had dedicated her life to saving people, including people like him. Maya exhaled sharply, her patience running thin. "You dragged me through this hospital like a criminal while my patient was still unconscious on that bed." She gestured toward the emergency room, where nurses were still tending to Teresa Lopez's son. "Do you have any idea what could have happened because of your arrogance?" Mitchell looked down for the first time, unable to meet her eyes. Carter turned to the surrounding officers, his face tight with barely contained anger. "You are all accountable for this. Every single one of you who stood by and let it happen." His voice was low, but the power behind it was unmistakable. Maya took another step closer to Mitchell, her voice firm but filled with quiet disappointment. "One day, someone like me is going to have to save your life. I just hope they show you more compassion than you showed me today." The hospital was dead silent. Mitchell, now fully realizing the weight of his actions, had nothing left to say. The damage was already done. Officer Brad Mitchell stood frozen, the weight of his mistake sinking in. The room was still tense, filled with the unspoken consequences of what had just happened. His hands clenched at his sides, his usual confidence replaced by something unfamiliar. Guilt. He had arrested an innocent woman. Not just any woman, but Dr. Maya Caldwell, one of the most respected surgeons in the country. And now he was facing the reality of what that meant. Chief Carter's voice broke the silence, his tone sharp. "Dr. Caldwell, I assure you this incident will not go unanswered. This is beyond unacceptable." His gaze flicked toward Mitchell, who shifted uncomfortably. "There will be a full investigation." Maya inhaled deeply, her pulse still racing. From the ordeal. She had spent years enduring small daily acts of discrimination. People questioning her authority, mistaking her for a nurse, patients asking for a real doctor when she walked into the room. But this was different. This was a blatant abuse of power, an assumption that nearly cost a child precious minutes of care. And now, the officers who had been so sure of themselves were the ones panicking. Before she could speak, the hospital doors swung open again. This time, a woman in a dark navy suit walked in, her heels clicking against the polished floors. She was flanked by two men in suits, their expressions unreadable. The moment they entered, several officers stiffened. Whispers spread through the room. She was from Internal Affairs. The woman's sharp eyes scanned the scene before landing on Chief Carter. "We need to talk, now." Her tone was clipped, no nonsense. The two men beside her carried files, and it was clear this wasn't just about an apology. This was an escalation. Mitchell's face drained of color. Internal Affairs wasn't just here for a slap on the wrist. If they were involved, it meant serious consequences were coming. Maya crossed her arms, her voice even but firm. "I'm pressing charges." Mitchell's head snapped up. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. The woman from Internal Affairs nodded. "We assumed as much." She turned to Maya. "Dr. Caldwell, the mayor's office has already been informed. We'll be handling this swiftly." The hospital staff, still gathered around, began murmuring among themselves. What had started as a horrifying mistake had now turned into a city-wide scandal. Maya turned to Chief Carter, holding his gaze. "This isn't just about me." She gestured around the room. "How many others have you arrested just because they fit the description? How many people don't get a police chief rushing in to correct a mistake? How many don't get a second chance?" Carter shifted uncomfortably, but he didn't look away. He knew she was right. Officer Mitchell swallowed hard. The weight of what he had done was no longer just about embarrassment. It was about accountability. He had thought he was following protocol, but his actions had revealed a broken system. And now, he was at the center of a growing storm. Maya exhaled slowly. She had spent her entire career fighting to be taken seriously, to be recognized for her skill, not the color of her skin. And in just a few minutes, these officers had tried to take all of that away. But instead, they had given her a platform. This was no longer just about her. It was about everyone who had ever been unjustly treated. The officer from Internal Affairs turned to Mitchell. "Hand over your badge and weapon. Effective immediately. You are placed on unpaid leave pending the results of this investigation." Gasps filled the room. Mitchell stiffened. His pride battled against his reality. Slowly, his hand moved to his belt, unhooking his badge and his gun. He placed them in the woman's waiting hand, his fingers trembling slightly. For the first time, Mitchell looked at Maya, not with authority, but with something closer to shame. He had been the one with the power. Now, she was the one holding him accountable. Maya held his gaze for a moment before speaking. "I don't want an apology." She took a step forward, her voice steady. "I want change." The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. And for the first time, Officer Mitchell truly understood the depth of his mistake. Officer Brad Mitchell stood frozen, his badge and gun no longer in his possession. The silence in the hospital lobby was thick, suffocating. He had spent his career believing he was on the right side of justice, but today he had been the one violating it. His gut twisted as he realized the full extent of what he had done, not just to Maya, but to every person who had ever been treated unfairly because of a lazy assumption. Dr. Maya Caldwell watched him closely, her face unreadable. She wasn't angry, not in the way people expected her to be. No, her anger had burned out long ago, replaced by something deeper: exhaustion. She was tired of moments like these, tired of proving herself, tired of fighting battles that should not exist in the first place. The officers from Internal Affairs stepped forward, their expressions firm and professional. The woman in charge spoke directly to Mitchell, her tone sharp. "Officer Mitchell, your actions today have put this department under scrutiny. Racial profiling has consequences. You will face an internal review and a full investigation." Maya exhaled slowly, her shoulders stiff as she turned to Chief Carter. "And what about the others?" She gestured toward the other officers who had stood by, watching her be humiliated without saying a word. Because, let's be honest, Mitchell wasn't the only problem here. A murmur rippled through the room. Some of the officers shifted uncomfortably, looking anywhere but at Maya. Others nodded in silent acknowledgement. The truth was, while Mitchell had been the one leading the arrest, every officer who had stood there in silence had contributed to it. Chief Carter's jaw tightened. He nodded once, understanding what she meant. "Every officer involved today will be required to undergo intensive racial bias training. This department has to do better." Maya's lips pressed together. "Bias training won't erase what happened to me." A nurse standing nearby, one of Maya's colleagues, stepped forward, her voice shaking with emotion. "This isn't just about today. It happens all the time. Security follows black doctors more often than white ones. Patients question Dr. Caldwell's qualifications. People assume she's not in charge, even when she's the most senior person in the room." A wave of agreement spread through the crowd. Other hospital staff began sharing similar experiences, times when they had been questioned, doubted, or mistreated because of their race. It was bigger than just one bad officer. It was a system that had allowed this to happen over and over again. Maya lifted her chin. "This is what I mean, Chief Carter. If I were anyone else, any other black woman without a title, this wouldn't even be a discussion. I would have been booked, processed, and left fighting to prove my innocence from behind bars." Carter nodded slowly, his expression unreadable. He knew she was right. He knew this had been a wake-up call. As the conversation continued, Maya felt a hand on her arm. She turned to see Teresa Lopez, the mother whose child she had been treating when this nightmare began. Tears welled in the woman's eyes as she gripped Maya's hands. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "You were saving my son, and I didn't stop them in time. I should have fought harder." Maya shook her head gently. "You did what any mother would do. You focused on your child." She gave Teresa's hand a reassuring squeeze. "The system should have done its job. You shouldn't have had to fight for me." Nearby, a journalist who had been covering an unrelated hospital story held up a microphone. "Dr. Caldwell, this story has already gone viral. People are demanding change. What do you want to happen next?" Maya paused, then looked straight at the camera. "I want justice, not just for me, but for every person who has ever been judged unfairly. I want police officers to be held accountable when they act on bias instead of facts. I want people to understand that no amount of success can protect you from discrimination if the system is broken." Her voice grew stronger, filled with the weight of every unjust moment she had ever experienced. "And I want every single person watching this to remember, your silence is part of the problem. Speak up when you see injustice. Demand change. Don't just record it. Fight for it. A round of applause erupted from the hospital staff. Even some officers, ashamed but enlightened, nodded in agreement. This wasn't just about one arrest, it was about a movement. As Internal Affairs escorted Officer Mitchell away, he glanced back at Maya. For the first time, he didn't see her as an angry black woman or a suspect. He saw her as a person, a doctor, a leader, a woman who deserved far better than what he had given her. And for the first time in his career, he wondered how many other people he had wrongfully judged. Maya watched him go, then turned back to her staff. She wasn't interested in revenge. She was interested in results. This was just the beginning. She had work to do. As Officer Mitchell was escorted away, Dr. Maya Caldwell took a deep breath. The weight of everything that had just happened settled over her, but she refused to let it crush her. This wasn't the end of the story. This was just the beginning of a bigger fight. She had spoken up, she had held people accountable, but there was still so much work to be done. The hospital staff gathered around her, offering quiet words of support. Some of the officers who had stood in silence before now looked at her with a mix of shame and respect. Change wouldn't happen overnight, but this moment had planted a seed. People had witnessed what happened, and now they couldn't ignore it. Silence was no longer an option. As she turned back to her patients, Maya reminded herself why she did this in the first place. She wasn't just a doctor, she was a fighter. And this battle, the one for justice and equality, was just as important as the lives she saved every day. This story is a powerful reminder that no matter how successful someone is, they are not immune to discrimination. But standing up, speaking out, and demanding change can make a difference. What do you think? Have you ever witnessed an injustice like this? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's keep this conversation going, and if this story moved you, make sure to like this video, subscribe for more powerful stories, and hit that notification bell so you never miss an update. Thank you for watching, and remember, change starts with us. See you in the next story.